Week 3 approaches. The Titans take on the Browns in Cleveland this week. We're going to preview that game. We got a great guest coming on to give us the Browns scoop. We're going to get into all the matchups to watch and how the Titans can come away 2-1 from this one. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Broadway Sports Media, partnered with 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo. And Justin, we got two 1-1 teams meeting this weekend. One team will go to 2-1. One team will go to 1-2, barring a tie, which we're not going to talk about. Let's get into this game. How's it going, Justin?
Doing well. Excited to preview this one. I'm expecting a really, really physical game here between the Titans and the Browns. And we got a great guest coming on to help us preview it in a couple minutes here.
Yeah, we'll welcome on Jeff Lloyd here in a few minutes, the host of the Locked On Browns podcast. We've had him on the show before. He's great. He really knows the team, so we're going to get the inside scoop on the Browns from him. But let's start with just our own general thoughts and takeaways. I'm going to go really broad here and kind of build off of what you just said, that this is going to be a physical game. Watching that game on Monday night between the Browns and the Steelers, I noticed some key areas of weakness for the Browns and some key areas of strengths, and it lines up a lot of with what the Titans do well and don't do well, which is that it seems like the Browns are struggling on offense. They're dealing with some injuries. Obviously, we saw the gruesome Nick Chubb injury on Monday night, and the heart goes out to him. That's horrible. You never want to see that. So he's going to miss this game. That's 3 weeks in a row. The Titans will see a team missing their starting running back, Alvin Kamara, week 1, Austin Eckler, week 2, and now Nick Chubb will miss week 3. Deshaun Watson continues to struggle since taking over as the Browns quarterback, coming off that suspension more than midway through last year. But overall, the Browns offense kind of struggling. The Browns defense has played really well. I mean, the Browns could have won 22-12 in that Monday night game if they don't turn the ball over, leading to defensive touchdowns twice. You know, the first play of the game and then one of the last plays of the game. Really horrible look for the Browns offense, who just struggled with turnovers and mistakes, fumbles all over the field. But then you look at their defense. They have a ferocious defensive line. Myles Garrett, another guy that could be dealing with an injury this week. We'll have to monitor his status. He briefly, appeared to leave the Monday night game with some sort of ankle tweak, but he stayed in after that and kept playing. Didn't have much production after that injury, so we'll have to monitor his status this week. But they have some good players in the secondary. It's not an elite defense, but it's a tough defense. Just really similar to the Titans. They want to be a run-first team, even without Nick Chubb. They're going to give it to Jerome Ford a lot. He's going to be their lead back. They're going to try to grind out yards. They're going to try to put pressure on the quarterback and make this a close, gritty game. These two teams are an interesting matchup because they're so similar.
Yeah, I've got a couple of thoughts. First off, as you said, heart goes out to Nick Chubb and that injury. I was watching that game with a friend last night. It was a stark reminder for me to how quickly things change in football, because I looked over at my friend and I thought Chubb was playing really well, right, throughout the early portion of that game. Just a reminder of what a terrific running back he is, one of the best in the NFL. I looked over at a friend of mine and I said, Titans are going to have to really, watch out for Chubb. I know we feel like it's a foregone conclusion that the Titans' run D is so good, but I wouldn't be surprised if Chubb has success. He's just that good where he could beat anybody. And they got a great O-line, in my opinion. Even right now, without Conklin, I still think it's a pretty decent O-line, especially in run blocking. And it was just plays later where that happened. And I was like,
brutal.
Oh my, I really could not believe that that's how it played out. But heart goes out to him. I thought Jerome Ford looked good in relief. Came in, had more than 100 yards. This is a guy that, barely played last year, was drafted to be the replacement for Kareem Hunt. They planned that in advance. They did a good job. They knew that contract was expiring, couldn't re-sign him. They went out and drafted Ford. And again, more than 100 yards last year, ripped off a 69-yard run where he should have gotten to the end zone and just didn't. Right? Stumbled right at the end. They ended up scoring on the next drive, or sorry, I believe it was the next play. But switching gears, I do want to talk about the defense a little bit before we bring Jeff on. And we're going to ask him this question, so I probably won't get too much into this. But I don't know if Titans fans appreciate or realize how bad this Browns defense was last year. It was terrible. I mean, they couldn't stop a nosebleed. Up the middle, they were horrific. Like, teams just ran the football at will on them. Night and day difference so far this year. Now, they went out in free agency, and I thought they made a really smart, shrewd signing in Dalvin Tomlinson, who's playing outstanding football for them. He's plugging up the middle, certainly a lot better than they did last year. And how about hiring ex-Titans assistant Jim Schwartz to be the defensive coordinator? I mean, what a great move that was. I thought it was a terrific hire at the time. It's only been 2 games, but Schwartz has them playing really, really high quality football. I mean, they held Joe Burrow to like 80 passing yards in week 1 and below 50% completion percentage. And you saw what they did on Monday night. The Steelers did not have much offense at all. Again, they do not win that game without those 2 defensive touchdowns. So this defense is playing really, really well. All the credit in the world to Jim Schwartz, who, again, I thought was an outstanding hire at the time. Titans were sad to lose him. You knew he was going to take that job, get his hands on a pass rusher like Myles Garrett. I mean, Jim Schwartz has had so much success throughout his career with talented pass rushers. And hey, call me crazy, Myles Garrett might be the most talented one he's ever coached. So what an opportunity that is for him. And you're already seeing him do some different things with Garrett. Everyone saw the viral clip in week 1 of Garrett playing basketball, right? Doing the crossover before the snap as he's lined up right above the center, I think it was, and just totally embarrasses the interior of the Bengals offensive line on route to the backfield. So this is a good football team, man. I think Titans fans are sort of sleeping on how difficult this game is.
Yeah, I agree. I just think, it's going to be one of those games where the defense does its job mostly throughout the game. The Browns will make some plays. They have a talented receiving core, especially with Amari Cooper. Elijah Moore hasn't been a huge factor yet, but we know he has game-breaking potential. David Njoku is a mismatch over the middle. They have weapons on offense for Watson to utilize, but Watson has been just struggling to have a feel in the pocket, to run the offense as structured and not get, he gets impatient and then holds the ball and tries to create something down the field. And it's kind of what we saw in Houston, except it's not working because the offense isn't set up the same way. So he's not playing well in structure. So I think the Titans defense will do their job in this game, hold the Browns to a limited number of points. But the question is going to be, how many points can the Titans offense score? Because this is going to be a real test for this offensive line that's played well. We keep talking about it on this podcast. They've been playing at or above a league average level. Well, this is going to be a huge test for them. I think Tim Kelly is going to be someone that, this is a game where he's got to prove that he can play to his team's strengths and avoid his team's weaknesses and do things to help out the offensive line. We saw them keeping extra blockers in and running a lot of play action against the Chargers' really talented front last week. Probably see a little bit more of that. A commitment to the run game we saw last week. I think we're going to see that again this week as well. Even if it's just like a grinded out 2 to 3 to 4 yards a carry, not a whole lot of room to make big explosives in the run game. They've got to do it just to keep that defensive line honest and then get the screen game going. Titans tried some screens in this last game, and they either were tackled quickly and snuffed out by the Chargers defense, or they never got set up. And there was that one where Tannehill ate the sack. There was another one where they tried to run a quick screen and the ball got batted back at Tannehill's face, and he had to spike it to the ground to avoid a turnover. So the screen game hasn't really been working well. They hit a nice one to Chigakonkwo early in the game last week, but things like that to mitigate what this offensive line mismatch is facing against a really tough Browns front seven.
Well, before we previewed the Chargers game, during the Chargers preview, I should say, we talked about how important it was for Ryan Tannehill to get the ball out of his hands quickly, right? And he improved from, 3.09 seconds against the Saints snap to throw to about 2.45, 2.50 against the Chargers. I think that's going to be another point of emphasis in this game, because you just can't have Myles Garrett pin his ears back and get after the quarterback, right? Whether he and by the way, I'm going to add, I don't think Myles Garrett's going to miss this game. I mean, I know they got the Ravens. They're on a short week. They've got the Ravens the following week. I'd be stunned if Myles Garrett didn't play in this game. Whether he's going up against Andre Dillard, who's had his struggles, or Chris Hubbard, who's been pretty good. In fact, Myles Garrett essentially against any tackle in the NFL, I give the advantage to Myles Garrett, right? There might be one or two of them that I think can hold up. Trent Williams in San Francisco, certainly one of them. But Myles Garrett's got the advantage. So they got to get the ball out quickly. The final thing I'll say about the offense and what they've got to do here, to add on to your point, is you talked about keeping them honest. You've also got to avoid the pre-snap penalties, right, that we talked about. That's kind of doomed them a little. Certainly, it felt like it was a drive killer every time it happened against the Chargers. You don't want to get yourself into 3rd and long and tip pass, because, again, that's when Myles Garrett and those rushers, Dalvin Tomlinson up the middle, get to pin their ears back and get after Ryan Tannehill. So you've got to stay ahead of the sticks, keep the offense on schedule. You want to be in, 2nd and 5, 2nd and 6 situations where you're still, you could run or pass. And certainly you want to be, 3rd and 4 or less when you do get into 3rd down. So it'll be interesting to see how they approach that, what the splits are, again, between Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears. But certainly they've got to stay ahead of schedule and keep Cleveland's defensive line honest, as you said.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I think, hitting the explosives that you get, we saw week 1, they missed big opportunities down the field. Week 2, they were able to hit those big opportunities. The Browns, like I mentioned, have a talented secondary. Denzel Ward is probably going to be seeing a lot of DeAndre Hopkins in this game. So moving Hopkins around, getting him in the slot to find some mismatches like they did on a few plays last week will be important too. And when we talk about the Titans defense, I really think this is just going to be a game of play your rules and play hard and, keep the man in front of you. But I honestly think the Titans defense can more or less dominate the Browns offense, especially if Watson continues to just not see things very well. This offensive line for the Browns, you mentioned it's pretty good. It is pretty good in run. I think in run blocking, they're better than they are as a pass protecting unit because, look, the Steelers are a great defensive line, but I would put the talent on the Titans defensive line up against, almost any in the league, but definitely against the Steelers. They don't have a TJ Watt the way the Steelers do, and the Steelers have a number of rotational and role players that are pretty good. Alex Highsmith would maybe be the best edge rusher on the Titans too. But Cameron Hayward is out right now. He didn't play in this game on Monday night, and we still saw the Steelers defensive line just completely overwhelm the Browns offensive line. Jeffrey Simmons, Danico Autry, Arden Key, Harold Landry. I put that group, Tierra Tart, I'd put that group up against anyone in the league. And maybe the Cowboys might be the one team, the Eagles maybe the two teams that are playing better than the Titans defensive line so far this season. But what we saw the Steelers do to that offensive line, I feel like we can see the Titans do that. And if they're even just half as disruptive as the Steelers were, there's going to be the opportunity to create game-changing turnovers just like the Steelers did. And the defense has got to capitalize on those opportunities, or else, they may not have the impact on the game that the Titans need them to have.
I do agree that the D-line is going to have opportunities to make plays against this offensive line. And I think it's a good offensive line, but I do think there are opportunities to expose them in certain areas. Certainly Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt, they're one of the better 1-2 punches in football, right? So full respect to the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive line. And those were the two guys that scored the defensive touchdowns, right? It was Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt. So full credit to them. But Jedrick Wills at left tackle, I don't think is playing quite as well as he was early on in his career. We saw him get beat badly on that one snap right around the edge. So I think Arden Key will have a chance to beat Jedrick Wills on Sunday. In fact, I think it's a more favorable matchup for Arden Key than Rashawn Slater was in week 2, going up against Jedrick Wills. And then certainly a rookie 4th rounder, DeJuan Jones at right tackle, who I was very high on. And I think DeJuan played well given the circumstances on Monday. I really think he did. He got beat TJ Watt that one time around the edge, but who doesn't TJ Watt beat, number one? And secondly, DeJuan Jones was actually their highest rated blocker in pass protection by Pro Football Focus. But again, I like Harold Landry's chances. Certainly if Landry can get him, DeJuan Jones is a mammoth man, 6'8", 350, 360, whatever he is. If Landry can beat him around the edge, use that classic speed move, he should be able to have the advantage, you would think, right? Harold Landry with that bend around the edge. So there will be opportunities for the Titans D-lines to make plays in this game. They just got to make them.
You mentioned Jedrick Wills there. Let me just read some stats. Ryan McChrystal tweeted this out, I think on Tuesday morning. Jedrick Wills' pressure rate allowed, 2020, 3.3%, 2021, 5.8%, 2022, 6.2%. Through 2 games in 2023, 10.7%. He's already more than halfway to the total pressures he allowed in 15 games as a rookie, that being in 2020. He's at 9 pressures allowed this season in 2 games. So there, we just said, there will definitely be opportunity. It's just going to be up to the Titans to capitalize on it. Any key matchups you want to point out in this game before we bring on our guest?
No, I think some of those that we just brought up make a lot of sense, right? The Titans D-line there against the Browns edge. I would look certainly at, you talked about the receivers. Amari Cooper, is Christian Fulton back in time? We'll have to monitor that. Mike Vrabel did say he was hopeful that they'll get Fulton and Amani Hooker back for that fact. David Njoku is a guy that can stretch the seam and make plays up the middle. So, Titans linebackers, Ezekiel Shire will probably be tasked with covering him on occasion. Again, Amari, whether that's Christian Fulton, Sean Murphy, Bunting, Amari Cooper's a top 20 receiver in this league, in my opinion. So those are some of the ones. And of course, I talked about Myles Garrett against, certainly the likes of Andre Dillard and Chris Hubbard.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the Titans will need to keep extra guys in protection to help out against Myles Garrett. It's the guy that's like, wherever he is before the snap, you got to identify him and get 2 blockers on him, or he is going to disrupt the entire play. So I think that does it for our side of the preview. Let's now welcome in our guest, host of the Locked On Browns podcast, Jeff Lloyd. Jeff, thanks for joining us today. How's it going?
It's obviously, been a little bit of a, hectic, chaotic about, I guess, maybe 12, 14 hours now. What was supposed to be such a highly anticipated game last night. The Browns had a lot of wrongs. They hadn't gone 2-0 since 93, hadn't won at Pittsburgh other than a playoff game since 2003. And then you're on the verge of that. Then you lose, obviously one of the faces of your franchise, what Nick Chubb has done in his time here, as far as just being, a great representative of the team, the city. I mean, his work in the community. It's just really, really, a tough time, because a player like that is just one where there's, look, everybody will argue any player on any team at any time. It was never those arguments on Nick Chubb. When Nick Chubb's name came up, everybody was kind of like, oh yeah, he bad, he good. Nobody ever had a bad thing about the player to say or about the person.
No doubt. Yeah. So while you're on the subject there, it was an awful season-ending injury. No one wants to see that. And the talk is obviously going to be dominated by Nick Chubb's injury now. But how do you think the offense will adjust going forward without him this season?
It was weird because, all the talk had been over the spring and summer that this team was going to evolve into Deshaun Watson's team. They were going to obviously still have Nick Chubb, but the point of emphasis was, with the additions of Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, Marquise Goodwin, was trying to put yourself in a position where, you were going to hopefully make sure that your $230 million investment in a Deshaun Watson hit. It's not there, obviously. Will it get better by the fact that it has to get better? We don't know. But in the same respect, he's got to get, up to a better level. He doesn't have to play like Josh Allen. He doesn't have to play like Patrick Mahomes. This Browns defense is really, really good, but he's got to make the plays when they're there. And 22 of 40, that just ain't going to cut it when you're making $230 million.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And as the Browns try to replace Nick Chubb, I mean, that's impossible. Nobody can do that. But do you think Jerome Ford can pick up some of the slack?
Jerome Ford, look, I mean, we didn't get to see him last year at 8 carries. He was essentially the 4th running back from this team. The only thing we saw was him was really be the kick returner. And he was actually really good at it last year. He was one of the bright spots on what was basically a down season. But, forced into the fire last night. Basically just thrown into the fire against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's not an easy situation to walk into. And imagine walking into that huddle, some heads are down, Nick is close with everybody. And, to go in there and, basically finish that drive, get the touchdown, get the 2-point conversion, then, going, all the way, basically almost, outside of the right hash mark, cutting it all the way back across the field, basically going 70 yards for a touchdown. You saw potential, and, you saw a kid that basically came into a really, really bad situation and a really tough situation, and it didn't seem to faze him. Like he was ready to go. That being said, I mean, to this point, 8 carries last year, what he's done to this point this year, can he do some things? That's, what we're hoping for.
Jeff, I know you already touched on Watson a little bit, but I feel like I've got to expand on it. Certainly, I think it's fair to say they haven't gotten their return on the investment yet with Deshaun Watson. Last year, coming off the 11-game suspension, there's a bit of a built-in excuse there, right? And it's certainly shaking off the rust, and that makes sense. It's a legitimate excuse. And we're only 2 games in right now, but as you said, they made some investments around him. You certainly expected it to be a lot better this year, and thus far it hasn't been. So at what point do we start to worry and say, okay, he's had ample time to shake off the rust, and sort of when is it appropriate to maybe hit that panic button on Deshaun Watson?
And it's actually funny the way you phrase the question, because it does make, obviously a ton of sense, because look, he had the entire offseason. He had all OTAs. Anywhere he went to work out, Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore showed up in tow, even when they weren't team-sanctioned things. He had all a training camp. He had preseason. And what happened? Didn't play so great week 1. But what did everybody try to say? Oh, well, the weather wasn't that great, this, that, and the other thing. And granted, he started slow week 1, but he took a big hit, like right around the 2-minute warning, and then led to the touchdown drive. And he seemed to play better after that. I think the problem is, and look, it's time to say it. Yeah. Look, I mean, the thing is, he wasn't injured. And that was always the thing I said for anybody that denied that he could maybe get back to his, high playing ability again. He wasn't injured. It wasn't like it was, an Achilles, a knee, something with his arm, with his shoulder. He was never injured. So, you can't, you can't use that as an excuse. Obviously, the missed time is one thing, sure. But, he's had plenty of time now to be back in football. So you're certainly concerned. There's no question. I think the biggest thing I'm noticing, and look, he's always been an athletic quarterback who can make plays. But I think he leaves the pocket, and that's okay. When quarterbacks can do what guys like Deshaun Watson can do, it's okay if they leave a pocket. But I don't think he's doing it essentially with a purpose. Is he leaving the pocket because he sees yardage to be had with his legs? Is he leaving the pocket because now he wants to go scramble drill? It doesn't seem like he knows exactly why he's leaving the pocket. So you got to have a purpose with that. And he's got the players to do it. You got nice slot players. David Bell had a couple of grabs last night. Elijah Moore is obviously a player they think could be a really, really big target for them and a really big contributor on offense. He can't get this win on Sunday. And, I love Nick Chubb. I truly do. And I really think he's going to be a really, really difficult thing to replace. But, you look at the teams with the good quarterbacks in the NFL and say, is Patrick Mahomes going to be that much in a tough spot if he loses his top running back? Josh Allen, are you going to expect an expectation or a drop-off because he doesn't have James Cook? It shouldn't be the case. You're the most important position in the league. You are, the highest paid guys. And guess what? Anytime something goes wrong, it means that more goes on the quarterback's plate, and you're supposed to embrace it, and you're supposed to find a way to navigate yourself and your team to victory.
Hit the nail on the head there, Jeff, and it'd be very, very curious to monitor his progress moving forward. Certainly against a really tough Titans defense on Sunday. Switching things over to the defensive side of the ball, Jeff, I said earlier on this podcast, this episode, I don't know that Titans fans appreciate how bad this Browns defense was last year. It was not good, in my opinion. Certainly, they were very leaky up the middle, right? Teams ran the football at them at will, couldn't do anything to stop it. And Titans fans, we shed a bit of a tear when they hired away Jim Schwartz, Titans defensive assistant, to be the defensive coordinator. And we shed a tear because we knew it was a terrific hire for the Cleveland Browns. And I would say through 2 weeks, Schwartz has them firing on all cylinders. I thought they've looked outstanding. Certainly some of the new pieces have helped. I think Dalvin Tomlinson was a nice addition in the offseason. But what are some of the things you feel that Schwartz is doing differently from, I believe it was Joe Woods, the defensive coordinator last year, that's better positioning this defense for the success we're currently seeing?
Well, the Browns last year just let teams run on them. They didn't care. They didn't do anything about it. And look,
really
if it's your 4-3 base and it's not getting done, well, then play 5 defensive linemen. I mean, you've got to do something. I mean, there was a drive against the Atlanta Falcons last year was just absolutely embarrassing. The Falcons, after about 13 plays threw the ball, I think they just felt bad. That's why they just let's call a pass here because, we're just humiliating these guys. But it was not only the Jim Schwartz thing was obviously huge. But, look, any defense coordinator, any coordinator, you're only as good as what you're working with. And they made that point of emphasis. You got him Okoronkwo. You got him Dalvin Tomlinson. Then you draft Ika, you draft McGuire. And then guess what? That was pretty good. Let's go make the trade for Zadarius Smith. Why not? Because Jim wants to be able to have fresh defensive linemen on the field at all times. If you're going to play that type of aggressiveness and you're going to put that much on your interior defensive linemen and, of course, your edge guys, you got to know that they cannot be gassed because you're basically asking them to sell out on every single play. So then they did that. And, of course, then the Shelby Harris signing late in the summer. The linebacker unit, look, it's not that the linebacker unit is playing that much better. Most of these guys were gone last year. You know what I'm saying? JOK was on IR. Anthony Walker was on IR. Sione Takitaki was on IR. All these guys were gone as it really started to fall apart on the defensive side of the ball. And one of the interesting things, and this is something we always talked about with a guy like Grant Delpit, because, modern day linebackers, Grant Delpit's pretty much the same size of modern day linebacker, and he's faster. So now the Browns are taking opportunities where they can use him because they signed Rodney McLeod to play with Juan Thornhill. And they have Grant Delpit playing closer to the line of scrimmage. He was lined up as a nickel linebacker on that interception last night. That's why Kenny Pickett didn't see him. He saw 22 and said, well, there's no way he's going to be there because normally, he's a safety. You're going to watch the tight end. He's going to watch an outer third. No, absolutely fell for it, hook, line, and sinker, ended up throwing the interception. They have a lot of talent. And the thing is they know they're a talented group, but it's different to be a talented group and know you have the leader that's going to put you in the position to succeed like you did. And the thing with those uniforms last night is, unless they were zooming in, you didn't really see the numbers. but all you saw was white and orange, side to side, white and orange. And you saw so many guys moving in unison. This is a fast defense. And it's, one of the oldest cliches in football is, hats to the ball. But man, you are truly seeing a bunch of hats to the ball, because even when guys cut back, they're not getting anything on cutbacks because, yeah, you might have beat the initial guy, but guess what? He showed up with 2 or 3 buddies.
Yeah, really. I mean, that's been an issue for a lot of teams around the league. The offensive line plays down around the league, it seems like, and there's a lot of great D lines out there. Browns have one of them, Titans have one of them. So this probably will be another gritty game for the Titans and for the Browns. Jeff, we really appreciate your time here. As we close up with one last question, we do this with all of our guests on the preview episode. How would you predict this game unfolds? Like, how do you see the game flow playing out? And if you are up for it, an ultimate score prediction for who comes out on top.
Obviously, it's a little early as we're still putting week 2 to bed over here. But it's interesting. Obviously, Tennessee with a big win last week. I think a lot of people are curious where Tennessee is exactly going. Is it going to be Ryan Tannehill if they stay in contention? Is it, Ryan Tannehill, then maybe when they fall out, all right, maybe we're going to see where we're at a little bit with Levis or whatever. But, they play good defense. They run the ball well. I mean, it's not everybody's recipe for winning and competing in the NFL, but, the Titans, similar to the Browns, it's been a recipe that's worked for them over the years. So it's going to be fun from that standpoint. Obviously, you were able to get the wide receivers involved a little bit more. The Browns cornerbacks have been ridiculously good to this point. I think Treylon Burks, Martin Emerson's probably going to be a pretty solid matchup come Sunday. Your prediction, the thing is going to be, can the Browns truly rally around this? And everybody last night kind of made it sound like, and we're saying the right things. But it's going to come down to number 4. And it feels weird to have to say this. It feels weird to have to hope for this, to be honest with you. But, he's being paid like one of the best in the game. He's got to go out there and perform like it. And he just, there's throws he's not seeing. Amari Cooper was open on an all-day route yesterday. How he missed him, I have no idea, because Amari Cooper was the only guy in the stinking picture. He's got to play more composed. And, making a big play every now and then with your legs is great. But, Deshaun Watson was a guy who was a 4,000-yard passer. I think the Browns would like to see that as opposed to a guy who's thrown for about, I think, 350 through 2 games. But, in my heart of hearts, would I say the Browns should win? I think the Browns should win, but I say that a lot. Doesn't necessarily mean it pans out.
Yeah, that's how Titans fans feel as well. It's a long season, lots of ups and downs. Browns feeling a little down this week after the Chubb injury and the pretty late, brutal loss there on Monday night. But I think, this is still a playoff contending team for both sides, and this game will be a big one to set the season in motion for the rest of the way. Jeff, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us, and have a great season.
All the best, gentlemen. Thanks for having me today.
All right, thanks again to Jeff Lloyd for joining us. Remember, you can follow him on Twitter at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. That has 2 L's, LLOYD, and get all his insights during this Titans-Browns game from the opposite side. All right, Justin, let's close this thing out with our own predictions. But before we give ours, let's read some listener predictions. I sent out a tweet asking for people to drop theirs, and I'm going to go through some of them here. Bill Seagrove says, I think the front 7 will be in Watson's personal space all day. Henry and Spears need to take their supplements this week because it's going to get ugly. Titans win it 21-17, and KB gets his first interception. I like that. I agree with a lot of that. Caleb Miller says, I feel like the only realistic prediction for the outcome of this game is that one fan base will end up being hopelessly depressed. As a Browns fan, I have 0 expectations and am frankly just scared. I do not want to watch them, but I unfortunately will. Browns 79, Titans 69. I don't know about that one. Eddie says 35-17.
He sounds excited that football's back, though. I'll say that.
He sounds ready to enter a football-induced depression, but I guess that happens to some of us. Yeah, already. They're looking at the draft, I guess. Eddie says 35-17 Titans. Bold prediction. Hopkins gets 2 touchdowns. Burks gets 1, and a pair for the running back duo. Parentheses, we need a game for them. LOL. So, yeah, I mean, he's predicting a big offensive explosion. I actually agree with a different prediction here from Grizzler. Sadly, this is not the game where we, meaning the Titans, break 30. Browns' defensive front and above average secondary are too much to break that ceiling. 17-10, Titans pull out the win. I like that prediction a lot. 17-10, I think it's going to be that kind of game. I definitely agree this is not the one where the Titans are going to hang a 30-burger unless the defense does some of the scoring like we saw the Steelers do on Monday night. But Justin, what's your prediction for the outcome of this one?
I'm going to be honest with you. I was going to go with the Browns victory before the Nick Chubb injury. It changes just enough for me.
Before seeing them play on Monday night, you were just going to predict that they beat the Titans?
I honestly, yes, I was. I just, the way I was going into it was, that's going to be a tough road environment. Nothing I saw on Monday from the Browns stunned me, right? Like I felt good that they've got a great defense, a good run game, and the quarterback's still sort of figuring things out. So I was going to go with the Browns victory, and then the Chubb injury just changes enough for me where I'm going to point this back in the Titans' direction. So I'm going to go 17-13 Titans in a really gritty, sort of ugly defensive first kind of game. I'll be honest, I still don't feel great about it. Like, I would not be surprised if the Titans lost this game, because a lot of what I believed is still true. Browns corners are outstanding. D-line's good enough to impact the pocket and get to Tannehill. I think it's one of the toughest road environments in the entire National Football League. So I don't love it. I don't feel great about it. But the Chubb injury, again, because I had such a close game regardless, is going to change just enough for me. 17-13 Titans.
Okay, I like that prediction. Do the Browns still have the elf thing in the middle of their field, the elf logo? Jamar Chase talking about them. We lost to a bunch of elves.
Jamar Chase talked about it after week 1, so I doubt they removed it that quickly, but I'm not certain.
Yeah, so we'll see the Titans play on the elf field this weekend. I'm going to go with a Titans win 20-16. That's 3 Browns field goals for you. Titans have a tough red zone defense. They've played well this year. I think they hold the Browns out of the end zone outside of maybe one time. And then themselves, maybe I've got them scoring a couple touchdowns and a couple Nick Folk field goals in this one. I do kind of think this is like a first team to 20 sort of wins the game here because it's going to be a struggle to score points. It's going to be just a classic, gritty, tough knife fight of a Titans game. And I'm looking forward to seeing being incredibly anxious throughout the game as it comes down to a final possession where the defense needs to stop or the offense needs to score. It's going to be one of those two things. So we'll see how this goes, but that will do it for this episode. Make sure you're following Justin on Twitter at JustinM_NFL. Follow me at Titans Film Room. And please, a reminder to all, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I did a breakdown yesterday of Treylon Burks' 70-yard receiving or 70-yard reception that sparked the Titans offense. That video is doing pretty well, if I do say so myself, so go check it out if you missed it. And for the YouTube viewers, I have a surprise, a special surprise. This is a surprise to you too. You don't even know I'm doing this. I have been recording this entire episode with a guest on my lap. Here is my dog, Bean. He is a cute dachshund. He's been under my shirt this entire podcast, and I thought I would reveal him to the viewers here at the end as a bonus for being a viewer of the show. You can see how cute my little dog is. Okay, that'll do it. Yeah, go ahead.
I thought you were getting a little pudgy. I didn't want to say anything. I would say, good for him. He's eating well. He lives with his girlfriend now. They're cooking meals together. I guess he's just eating well. But no, it was not. I'm happy to see it's not you neglecting your health. It's the fact that you had your dog under your shirt the whole time. And might I just say, this now makes it a very special episode because we just broke our one guest rule. We normally only have one guest on the pod.
Oh, wow.
We had 2 this week.
Yeah, but this one's been very quiet, which, we like that. It could have been worse. It could have been barking and whining the whole time, but no. All right, that'll do it. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. We'll be back with more content this week and a recap episode next week of this Browns-Titans game before we move on to week 4. So thanks again to everyone for watching and listening. Until next time, y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.